Yes, yes. Welcome to the ancient world of tabletop games. I am Agamemnon from the historical documentary Time Bandits. This is a report from a fugitive. Role-playing games feature characters, and those characters are recorded on character sheets. I have a pile of dead sheets here. Let's take a trip down memory lane and remember heroes and a few heroes who were clearly villains. You may not find it funny. I know the players certainly wouldn't find it funny. Mostly they're Cthulhu character sheets. You'll find D&D in there and maybe some other obscure systems. Let's just take them as we find them, shall we? I should point out the format. You, as a player, are free to scrawl whatever the fuck you like across your character sheet. There may be accusations aimed at other players, and that's as it should be. All is right and proper in the world. We'll begin with Vanilla Cube. Gangster I can't. Gangster rapper, birthplace, Arkham. Arkham, for fuck's sake. Vanilla Cube. Actually took rapping skill. 95% chance. Well, anything else that a rap star would have. How about 99% Ingram Mac 11? Did it save Vanilla Cube? This is a kind of game that you tick a little box next to the skill if you've used it, and the character doesn't have rapping or dance ticked, and it's fair to say it does not have the Ingram Mac 11 skill ticked either. Climb, yes. Fast talk, yes. Listen, yes. Psychology, yes. But no weapon skills. Those didn't save this character. Technically, is the character dead? Let's hear from the character. Went back to Mesopotamia in the early BCs. Fuck it, I lived. The other players pointed out that once this character was shot through time into the dim and distant past, the character was automatically dead. The player demanded that I write an adventure set in the past, with a chance of returning back to the future. Well, who knows? Might write it one day. Next, Hilary Swanson, Agony Aunt. Definitely dead. Let's look at the rear of the character sheet and some of the equipment. All sorts of strange cameras with infrared film and things like that. Skin-tight leather trousers, see-through blouse, gold pen. She's Medallion Woman, isn't she? Anyway, killed by big monster. Oh well. Who do we have here? Vincent Dam. Almost shot dead by the guy we went to save. Died horribly. Little left over other than pieces of flesh and gallons of blood. An assembly line worker. Next, Albert Jamboree. I must point out that many Cthulhu characters were called Albert. It was a running gag in terms of the naming stage. You get to that naming stage last in character creation. That's another rule of roleplay. And no one ever stops you from naming your character whatever the fuck you want to call your character. Once, though, I had to step in and stop a character from calling himself Niogtha Death, Private Eye, in a Cthulhu game, and I said Niogtha is one of these creatures in the Cthulhu game. What's wrong with that? Well, were your parents cultists? No, not as far as I'm aware. Well then, you go through the adventure, you mention your name. Any cultist in the game will start at the sound of your name, for the cultist will have hidden Cthulhu-type knowledge of these creatures and their names and their bad habits and what's in their fridge and all the rest of it. At that point, you see a startled cultist pull a gun and shoot the bastard dead. That's the level of gameplay we're talking about here, isn't it? Well, obviously I'd shoot him. He's a cultist. Well, how do you know he's a cultist? He starts at the sound of my name. Yes, but you don't know your name has any significance. It's a name that would have affected gameplay. It was all bullshit, of course, and the character was Jack Smith or something by the end of it. Anyway, only that one time. Don't name your characters after elder gods in a game featuring elder gods, when those elder gods are secret from society at large. I felt I had to point that out, and the player wondered what I was talking about. Albert Jamboree, librarian, keep fit fanatic, dead. Doesn't say why, just says dead. All the hit points are eradicated. That's all we need to know. Next, Dread Bollocks. Armed robber. Developed a phobia, fear of physical combat. Blew myself up, burning the house down. Next we have Smiley Wayne, teacher from Mega City 1. This is something that I would do with basic Cthulhu character sheets. I would adapt the rules, change a few things on a character sheet, and create another system. And we would just carry on as normal. We did a Cthulhu-type adventure. It was all about pirates. And it wasn't Cthulhu. I'm saying I just took the system and said, let's do a pirate adventure. We'll use that system. No tentacular horror here unless you meet a kraken. And I did this with spaghetti westerns as well, and Star Wars was another one. And here we had Judge Dredd. I have the blank character sheets in front of me, and I ported in a lot of detail from the, first edition of the first Judge Dredd RPG. I'm pretty sure that's a Games Workshop game. And all the stuff here, all the equipment just came from that. And it was turned into a Cthulhu character sheet. I didn't remove the sanity section from it, but I could easily have. Perhaps I left it in for some reason, like psychic attacks, telepathy, those kind of things featured in the stories quite a lot. Anyway, there's Smiley Wayne. Lost his arms and legs in a Lawmaster accident. Well, Judge Harvey Rage. Rage. That reminds me of playing in the Judge Dredd game I was just talking about. Not the one that I've invented here using the Cthulhu system. But yes, I was a side judge, and we were all inside this transport flying through the city, and some news came on, and we were listening to the broadcast. And it was written into the adventure that the broadcast was interrupted. Now, by coincidence, one player reached over and switched the broadcast off. I said, hey, that could have been important. I was listening to that, and another judge character stepped in and said, yeah, switch it back on. And the judge who had switched it off just turned round and went spontaneously mad and started shooting up the whole place. He said, look out, he's got a case of future shock, and we had to just drill the crap out of him. So he died, and he sat there in a fit of pique, as often happens when a game is derailed like that. The player picked up a bunch of dice and rolled them and said, this is how many judges I take with me before I'm shot dead, and rolled a ridiculous number, which we all scoffed at. Let's carry on. What do we have here? This is Star Wars, but it's Cthulhu character sheets. Jasper Starburst, a mechanic, goes into negative hit points. Again, it doesn't say why. Back to Cthulhu itself. Character called Adolf Himmler, age 96, retired priest from Hamburg, turned into monster, and scrawled across the bottom of the character sheet, pizza, which was the consistency of the monster the character turned into. Had a fear of books. Well, next. Maxim Shark has a blaster as a weapon, so this is back to a Cthulhu character sheet, but playing a game of Star Wars. I had a free Star Wars adventure. It was from West End Games. Star Wars has gone through many different incarnations in the RPG world, but that was the first one. And the adventure was sitting there. I didn't like the system. It was a dice pool system, and I generally find those unhelpful game mechanics in RPGs. Very few dice pool systems are workable, for my purposes anyway. What do we have here? The statement. Statement of death. Other players stole our ship, we couldn't escape, and died. A great cliche of science fiction role-playing games is the following statement. We steal a starship. And it leads to a lot of trouble. Maxim Shark. Well, we return to a genuine Cthulhu character, Roger Brownstone. Cause of death. Killed by a gigantic vaginal cave monster. This next one, I'm struggling to work out what the character sheet is. There are qualities and drawbacks on it. It must be something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yes, right. It is. But I don't think that character died. No, that character's still alive. John Baptist. The adventures we had with John Baptist. I think the last time we saw John Baptist, he'd travelled through to another dimension and was engaged in sex with a shape-shifting demon who could be male, female, or whatever he wanted. I don't know if that's a step up from your typical Buffy adventure or not. Fat Boy Albert Slim, bootlegger, died. But I won, I solved it, and then scribbled across at the bottom, not. So didn't solve it, had fear of fire. Keeping with a fiery theme, we go to Arnold Chong, a Chinese exchange student. I'm surprised he's not called Albert, and he just writes that the other player set us on fire. Well, I've been on the receiving end of that myself, and as a player in a Cthulhu game, I was set on fire. I was the one character who could have saved everyone else later, and they all died, and obviously you sit in on the game and you watch and make ghostly comments slagging off the players and their awful playing style once you are deceased, and then you gloat as they all die too. we switch over to, what's this one? RuneQuest. A character called Aqua Barkin, the Elf Herbalist. And all kinds of things scribbled up the side of the character sheet here. Same old story. Become mean, then die. Should stay as a pleb, I live longer. Giants are bloody deadly. An encounter with a giant in which one of the deceased characters uttered the classic line, "Rah," and then ran in to attack the giant, involving everyone else in the fight against the giant. And it was supposed to be a negotiation. Giant turns up and says, "Look, I'm a giant. You're not messing with me. You aren't going to start an actual fight with me." And of course, I knew that the players would start an actual fight, so I had statistics handy, and they learned a valuable lesson. I shall not be resurrected. Poor bitch never knew the pleasure of a good rodding. It goes on round 3 sides of the character sheet here. Remember, don't play elves anymore. Their stats are crap. It didn't matter really how good your stats were. Oh, good God, these stats are shit. This raises a point about role-playing games. When you're rolling statistics and they're rubbish, you just play the character. It's not your statistics in the game, it's how you play your character. This is a lie, of course, but it's a lie we cling to. Oh, those really are shit stats. May try a human next time. A priest might work. It's like a massive commentary about... I mean, there's no mention of... Usually you get these sarcastic comments aimed at other players, but no. Not in this case. I'm looking at all of this equipment written on the back. Had a unicorn called Randall. Well, this is not a character sheet I'm staring at. It's a tiny piece of paper, a note. From me to another player. You hear someone sneaking away somewhere, and the response from the player is, "Sneak out of toilet and search for sneaker." And then I've written on it after that famous last words. So the character went off alone in the middle of the night and died and complained bitterly about it, but I don't seem to have the character sheet connected to it. Next we have RuneQuest Japan. The supplement is called Land of Ninja. And here we have Dr. Isha Honda, bled to death. Let's have a look. You can get quite a bit of detail from the character. No, I don't see it. RuneQuest has very detailed hit locations, but there's nothing listed, so it must have been a wound that we didn't even get down to recording. The player just sat there and went, "Ugh." Dungeons and Dragons rears its head, finally. Oh, good God. I remember this. There's an American term. It's used internationally now. It's TPK, Total Party Kill, meaning the entire group of players will lose the entire group of characters. All the characters die on the adventure. It happened here. Players would sit and joke about this and say, "Why don't we all go the same character in a game of Dungeons and Dragons?" And they all turned round and said, "Let's all create bards." And they laughed. "Let's all go a party of wizards." They were talking about starting play, so it's first level. And you can't really do very much at first level. You want a fighter with you to survive. But they all created monks. Friar Bob. What do we know about Friar Bob? He's gone into negative hit points and died. What's his equipment like? It's lamentable, I imagine. Monk's outfit, sandals, loose clothing, really. 20 feet of rope and a goblin's skull. Friar Tom. What do we know about Friar Tom? He has also gone into negative hit points, but even more of them. Eaten by rust monsters. What a terrible death. I don't believe he would be eaten by rust monsters. He's not made of metal. Well, it's what the player's written down anyway. I think he means attacked by rust monsters. He had 50 foot of silk rope. Friar Harry Corbett, the monk who went into the greatest number of negative hit points. He didn't bother with rope. Who do we have here? We're moving on now. It's a slightly different character sheet. This is a dedicated character sheet made for Dungeons & Dragons again, but it says World's Largest Dungeon at the top of it. I'll hunt that down off a shelf and include it in this video. Kentucky Bill the Wondrous, a wizard who has all sorts of things on his character sheet. We don't really have any cause of death written down. That's not his... There are extra sheets here. Some spells. Kentucky Bill the Magnificent, written on an extra sheet that's been printed out, just to show us his hireling, Manfred, a swordsman, who has been scored off with a big X through him. There's also a familiar, it's a toad. The toad seems to be alive, but poor Manfred died. We carry on to a fresh character sheet for Kentucky Bill the Wondrous Wizard, and he is dead all the way across his character sheet. His toad appears to have outlived him. We'll carry on again. Another World's Largest Dungeon character. Darth Invasive, a fighter, just dead. Another sheet for Kentucky Bill the Magnificent, with some alterations to the hireling Manfred, presumably before he died. We go back to regular Dungeons & Dragons character sheets. Gross Knox the Barbarian, dead. Let's carry on. Balthazar Bling, the Sorcerer, an elf. All there is to tell you that they're dead is a huge number of negative hit points. Next, Death Starbuck, in brackets, Roger. I guess you just called him Roger Death Starbuck? A cleric. Died, written on the back of the character sheet. Meddling Fool, the Ranger, an elf. Died by werewolf. Seemed to have fired off a lot of arrows. Breck the Barbarian, and it says up the side of the... I can't read this. Up the side of the character sheet. How would Breck the Barbarian die? Valiantly in battle? No. Suffocated inside my bag of holding. I think he was hiding from something and he climbed inside his own bag of holding and sealed it from the inside. But I don't know, there must have been some rule about that. I think you find out the hard way not to climb into things. Another world's largest dungeon character, Dark Forbidding, not foreboding. Well, that's quite a high-level character by then. We played about half the world's largest dungeon before the gaming group broke up for one reason or another. We couldn't get the players back into it. Let's carry on. What do we have here? RuneQuest again. Valentin Pod, a soldier. Dead, critically arrowed, it was damn unlucky. Sticking with RuneQuest, Jesus Garcia Piñata, dead. Gutted by the look of it. In RuneQuest there are 7 hit locations. So it's head, chest, both arms, both legs. You have the abdomen as well. And the character record shows the abdomen is gone. RuneQuest again. Hefty Humpy Bum, a sailor. Both arms chopped off in the same round by trolls. And the character sheet, the damage record confirms this. Yes, if you take 16 damage and you only have 14 hits, then you are running a deficit, shall we say. Sneddy the Viking, Gargoyle Slayer, had his left leg chopped off. Lucifer Satan Brew scores through the entire character sheet with a diagonal slash running top right to bottom left to signify the death of the character, and writes God doesn't exist. A barbarian ogre sort of had his chest caved in and just generally cut up. Going back to Cthulhu, Jack Dunce, narcotics detective, shot by SWAT team, blames other player again, emphasises the word again there. $500,000 in a Swiss bank account. Well, started play with 65 sanity, went down to 56. Cthulhu character James Gantry dead. Unusually, must have died so quickly. Didn't actually have height, weight, hair, eyes, age, sex, occupation, birthplace or residence written in. Just a name. Let's see if we can deduce the type of character here. I'm guessing a martial artist, because that's where all the skill points have gone. Stuff like grapple, punch, martial arts. Harry Morgan, criminally insane. That's the occupation. Wow. Harry's a psychopath, ex-army, committed after basic training, hospitalised, transferred to this asylum for groundbreaking treatment, love child of Shirley Bassey. Cthulhu again, roaring 20s, brute visor, mafia enforcer, shot by other player. Ernest Blofeld, cat breeder and big game hunter. Killed by a twat. You can't bargain with monsters. Who will feed the cats now? Poor kitty cats. Seems to have had mafia connections. John Ross, a toy maker. Dead. Patsy O'Sullivan, Dr. O'Sullivan, ship's doctor, Irish, has written death across the character sheet instead of dead. And I turn over to look at the back of it. Bearing in mind, a lot of these Cthulhu characters are not meant to live long. They're lucky if they live through one adventure. I mean, I turn to the back of the character sheet and it just goes on forever. Patsy's mother and father died when he was very young, and he spent most of his youth in Dublin with the great aunt he detested. Though he was happy in the rough Dublin streets, she packed him off to get a foreign education. This is not the easiest writing. A foreign education in America. His training and teaching bored Patsy, though he was extremely intelligent and quite capable, and he longed for excitement. This came through barroom brawls, and later he became involved in organised boxing matches. Organised but illegal. After 5 years, he'd become a qualified doctor and a fist fighter with a large reputation. Then the bombshell struck. Prohibition was introduced, and he found a sudden, uncontrollable urge to leave the country. To save on the cost of returning to Ireland, he enrolled as a ship's doctor, a job he holds to this day. His travels took him round the world, and he knew for sure wherever the ship stopped, a fight and some money would be near at hand. On one trip from America in 1924, the destination was Britain, and he met and started talking to an unusual old gentleman. Welsh he was, and a very eccentric person too. This man, his ideas, his beliefs, and his pointed star rock completely revolutionized Patsy's lifestyle. He began reading books about occult phenomena and weird historical mishaps. Of course, he didn't believe any of that rubbish about monsters, but he was fascinated by the theory of the planets. He soon gave up his boxing and would sit in his cabin for hours on end looking at the bit of planetary theory pamphlet he was given. This is the same player's other character who had already died, and he was keeping the character alive in a way, and this planetary theory was a bit of a catchphrase. Later next year, on a trip to the Far East, Patsy was amazed to meet up with another believer, a cripple in a wheelchair. Come to think of it, he had a Welsh accent as well, and this was another relative. He had a whole family of these characters, but it's something that you do in Cthulhu. You create the insert as applicable, the husband, the wife, the aunt, you name it. You have another family member come in to find out why the first family member died, and whole swathes of your family are killed as a result of strange doings. This other fellow in the wheelchair was actually, I think my character pushed that character around. Yes, my character must be in here too. My character died. I haven't played many Cthulhu characters. Mostly I've run adventures. But now I think of it, yes, several of us took wheelchair duty pushing the other fellow around. Yes, he had a Welsh accent as well, and droned on about monsters with hands as big as elephants. Alas, that was the last he heard about believers in the planetary theory. The whole family had been wiped out by then. True, he searched through many libraries for books on this subject, but could only find books about stupid cults and creatures which he discarded without reading, and silly phrases like put stakes in vampires, silver bullets kill werewolves, and beware of the gate. For some reason, this character has gained immunity to cyanide. I don't know why, but cyanide didn't kill him. I wonder what did. If I remember rightly, he was the character who went off to get dynamite, and other players said, we don't want to be getting dynamite, and he turned and said, this is America, you can do what the fuck you like. And I think he was the tamest of the characters involved. Let's carry on. Kathy Docherty Megan, law student, incinerated, but not a zombie. Makes all the difference, of course. Next character, Cameron Hoffman. Zombies ate me. Typical. Quote, hey, loan me $20. John Robert Wood, American playboy. Fear of the sea. Died spurtily. I'm not quite sure how you die spurtily. Just more characters with deceased written on them. Luthien Tenuvial. Not a character in a Tolkien-based game, but Cthulhu. Just deceased. Father Abraham Lacton. Ex-priest, blown up by soapy bubble monster. Nastasia Rumagico, no left leg, no knee down to the... Oh no, it's just, I wonder what that was. It's like no left foot, then to the knee, then no left leg, and died. Gradually eaten by something, I'd expect. Helen Sweeney, the pool hustler, cultist, no, just locked away. This character didn't die, but went to 0 sanity, and that's the end of your character in Cthulhu anyway. Just grabbed and put away inside the asylum. Pansy Hightower Simpson turned into giant insect, had fear of insects. Another character who didn't actually die, just went to 0 sanity. Michael Masters, a Scottish Cthulhu character, very deceased. Some of the finishing sanity totals on here are ridiculous. Characters with 3 sanity and 4 sanity. Beau Sebastian Phillips, Belgian con artist, deceased twice over, apparently. Jessica Powers, the arms dealer, I imagine shot dead. Di Williams, the professor we were talking about earlier, the one who inspired Patsy the Doctor. We've got deceased, died with honour written on his character sheet, and what's his finishing sanity total? It's about 45. He's written on the character sheet, 4 adventures, veteran. So he'd survived 4 Cthulhu adventures. Ward Phillips, an American priest, deceased. Yeah, I think some players were going through H.P. Lovecraft's stories and just stealing the names. So Ward Phillips would be one from Howard Phillips Lovecraft. Randolph Carter, just straight up stolen from H.P. Lovecraft's stories. Spanish gangster. Dead, written so large that it takes up a third of the character sheet there. Has a fear of monsters, not really good in a game with yes. Now here's my character who was pushing the wheelchair for a while. I have 3 copies of this. One for the character aged 31, another for the character aged 32, and then died at the age of 34. Let's see what sort of differences there are. Some grim statistics there. I don't know what strange demonic pact I engaged in, but she had superhuman constitution and top physical perfection in a game of Cthulhu, or at least in the first 6 editions of the game, you could have 18 constitution at most, and this character has 26. I don't see why. There are quite a lot of things written down. Went through many adventures. Almost got to the end. She almost encountered Cthulhu himself, or itself. Gradual reduction in sanity through the years. Let's get through the last few. Lucky John Smith. Deaf in his left ear and deceased. I think the latter is more troublesome than the former. Jasper Tumshaw. Dead and deceased. Roman Maroney, deceased. Had a broken nose before the end. Who's this? Tammy McBrien, a Scottish clairvoyant. Dead. Left hand, none. Left leg, fucked. Circumcised, I'm guessing that was by choice. Crippled, 2 broken legs. But hey, still smiling. Jean-Paul Legover, an actor. Deceased, probably for the best. Fergus Balmoral McClure, deceased. Albert Cromhurst, one of many Alberts in Cthulhu games. Just dead. Vernon Pomplon, deceased. Benjamin Nathaniel Crawford, just with a scribble of hating the other character the other player who got him killed. No real cause of, well, I suppose cause of death, other character. The Desert Wolf, deceased. Johann Christian von Oerstadt, likeness Burt Reynolds. Emptied gun into it. Dead. Well, and there's another character. Oh, this is another member of this extensive Welsh family going around meeting Patsy the Doctor. I haven't come to the end. There are many, many other character sheets with even more complex causes of death written on them. I just looked at these after seeing something on the internet within the past week. It was an expectation that players who sit down to play role-playing games believe their characters are going to survive from adventure to adventure. I speak from experience when I say that I witnessed the quickest character death I'd ever seen. The character was introduced at the start of an ambush scene and walked up and said hello, and we went straight into the ambush scene and we were given a chance to take action. This was what the Americans call TPK. We were all wiped out, but this was the new character who introduced himself and lasted 1/5 of a combat round. In a game of RuneQuest, a combat round is divided into strike ranks, and a strike rank is about 1.2 seconds. So this character said hello and lasted 2.4 seconds after that. As did the rest of us. We were all peppered with arrows. Expect your characters to die. You might hope that they would last through a gaming session. I keep counting this one up in my head, and I think I've played 5 game systems in which it's possible to die during character creation. So you don't even get to play the game. The only one that makes sense there is the game Nephilim. You are playing characters who have lived previous lives, and if you want more skills, then you die and inhabit another body and inhabit another body. That one makes sense on its own terms. Your characters are there to die by accident, by their own stupidity. Occasionally the villains will kill them. Expect to be killed by your fellow players, accidentally, deliberately, conspiratorially, forgetfully. And I've seen players kill other players off. No, not other players. That's going a bit far. Well, I've seen players attack other players. That's not characters versus characters. That's actual players getting up and walking across the room and hitting other players. That is a role-playing fact. There is no need for violence at the table. Only the depiction of violence through abstract means using rules and dice and character sheets and all the rest of it. Frankly, I'm surprised that more people didn't write down the exact reasons why their characters died. I think they move on and they grab a fresh character sheet and they create another one and they carry on. Expect your characters to die. Many characters also expect to avoid paying tax. If you fill in a character sheet and you have hit points, you can be killed. And I say all that with a deep sense of irony, knowing that the very first character I created is still alive. We just stopped playing that game, and it's unusual for characters to retire. You just keep going and going and going, and then your character dies. It's far more unusual to retire. You just keep coming back to it, and eventually something gets you. Eventually, Batman would be shot dead. In Dungeons & Dragons, your character was expected to retire. You get up to about 10th level, and you've done everything you need to do. You create another character. And another and another. So you should have plenty of characters to go on. You don't create one character at a time. You have a whole bunch of them, or you should do anyway. Playing in different games, playing in different groups, you should be able to grab a character and just go. This is especially true if you're playing in a longer adventure, a campaign, and then someone else starts a campaign and it's a different campaign. You'll need another character for that. You can't be everywhere at once. Create your characters and create more characters. Know when to get out. Survive. Retire, create more characters. But if your characters die by the dozen, we played RuneQuest Vikings and there's a whole raft of those, covered in comments about other players getting various people killed. I shall have to hunt those out. These were all stored in a box. I mean, there's no reason to frame them and hang them on the wall. I suppose you would frame one and hang it on the wall if it survived, but it's, mostly Cthulhu, and in Cthulhu you must expect your characters to die. Though if you die solving the mission, that is itself a victory. And on that note, I think we'll end shuffling paperwork for now.